Hi, I'm Chef Claire Clark, and today I'm making a British classic, trifle. Now, if you can't choose and you get very stuck between sticky toffee pudding, apple crumble, or trifle, I've got the perfect solution. I'm going to put them all together. Sticky toffee, apple crumble, trifle. It's going to be delicious. The first thing we need to do is make the jelly for the bottom of the trifle. Now, I like to use some really good quality apple juice, and I find the Bramley apple juice, or a mix between the Bramley and a Cox's apple, works best because it gives you a really nice sharp flavour. So I'm going to take a full bottle and I'm going to pour that into a pan. So add some sugar into the apple juice, and you might want to try this. I know I've got about 25 grams and it works for me. But if you find it's too sweet or not sweet enough, you can adjust it accordingly. And that needs to go onto a high heat to bring it to the boil. The next thing you're going to do is soak the gelatine sheets. We're going to place them individually into very cold water. In a couple of minutes, they'll go soft, and that's when we know that they're ready. So my apple juice and sugar has now warmed through. It's just off boiling point. So we're going to squeeze the excess water from the gelatine and pop it into the pan and just give it a stir so you know that it's completely melted. Now I'm going to pass this just to get rid of any gelatine that might not have dissolved. So that's going through the chinois, or a nice fine strainer, anything you have. And we're going to pour that into the bottom of our trifle bowl. Now I've got a whopper of a trifle bowl here, but if you haven't got anything so big, you can adjust your measurements here so it fits your size bowl that you have. So I'm just going to pour that into the bottom. Then that now goes into the fridge and we're going to leave it to set. It's going to take about 2 hours. So we're moving on now to the sticky toffee pudding, and it's a lot easier than you think. So we're going to take a pan, we're going to take the water and the dates. Now I use medjool dates, the pitted ones, available anywhere. But if you've got dried ones, that's also fine. I just find these gives a lot more softer cake at the end of the day. So you're going to put your dates into the bowl and then add your water. I'm going to put them on to boil, and they're going to take about 10 minutes until they're completely soft. So whilst they are boiling, we're going to move on with the rest of the pudding. So we're going to take the butter, and you can use margarine if you so wish, that's also fine. With soft dark brown sugar, they go together, and we're going to cream them together. If you've got an electric mixer or a hand mixer, yep, go ahead and use that. So once that's nice and pale and fluffy, we can start to add the eggs. Just give them a little beat together first. Combine them gently together. It's really good to have your eggs at room temperature. You'll get a lot more volume from your mix and your eggs if they're at room temperature. Now I've got a little bit of my egg in. I'm going to add a little bit of my dry ingredients. So in here I have my flour, and I'm going to add my baking powder into the flour and my salt. I'm using sea salt, but if you have anything else, that's fine. I pre-sieved the flour, so I'm going to add about a third into the bowl. And now nice and gently work that through. Then I'm going to add the rest of my egg. And stir that in. So once that's all mixed in, we're going to add in the molasses. That's the treacle, black treacle. Now, if it's a really cold day, you might find that this gets very, very thick. And so you can just give it a quick 10 to 15 seconds in the microwave, and that'll make it a lot more pliable and it'll be easier to mix into the cake mix. So we're going to mix that in. And then lastly, the rest of the flour. Now, I'm not going to mix that in all the way through because we've still got our dates to go in. So I'm just going to put that to one side. Once the dates are completely cooked all the way through and they're nice and soft, we're going to add the bicarbonate of soda and we're going to process them in the blender until they're really smooth. So we're now ready to add the dates into the mix. And again, I'm going to add about half the dates and then I'm going to combine those together. You don't want to overmix the batter at this stage. So don't worry if it looks a lumpy, that's fine. It just don't overmix it. Then we go in with the rest of the dates and mix till fully combined. We're going to pour that into a 8-inch cake tin. Now I'm using like a Victoria sandwich tin that's got greaseproof paper on the bottom. Stop it from sticking. And I've just greased the sides, no flour. And you might have a little bit mix left, so you can either make some cupcakes or something extra with that little bit. I tend to fill about half a centimetre from the top. We're going to bake that on the middle shelf at 170 degrees centigrade for about 25 minutes. The next part is my favourite part, and that's to make crumble. So you can use whatever sugar you like. I like mine to taste a little bit more like caramel. So I'm using a light brown soft sugar. And to give us a little bit of texture, I'm also going to add some oats. So we're going to put the flour, the oats, the sugar, and a little bit of salt if you want it. And I'm just going to whisk those together to combine. Then I'm going to use butter, which is at room temperature. Shouldn't be too soft, but equally you don't want it to be rock hard. I want my crumble to make quite big chunks because I want it to look really bold in the trifle bowl. So I don't want it to be fine like you would find on top of an apple crumble. So just break it into the dry ingredients. And then using your fingertips, just press it through your fingertips, combining it into the dry ingredients. Kind of flattening out the butter so it works through nicely. So once the crumble has come together and I can see that I can squash it and get quite big lumps, we're ready. So I'm going to put it onto a non-stick baking tray. If you haven't got a non-stick baking tray, line it with parchment paper first. And then sprinkle the crumble over the tray. And I'm going to actually form some larger lumps of crumble as well. Like I say, I want some lumps to be quite big, nice and chunky. And then some looser stuff as well. And then we're ready to bake that. So I'm going to bake at 180 degrees centigrade. And it's going to take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. We're moving on now to making the sticky toffee sauce. This really is so delicious and really, really simple. So we're going to take the pan and first of all, we're going to pop in our butter and then we're going to melt it. Now we're going to add in the sugar and the cream. And then we're going to return them to the heat and we're going to bring them to the boil. It's beautiful and glossy and shiny. It's only been boiling for a minute. So I'm going to pop in the sea salt, give it a stir, and that's the sauce ready prepared. To add texture into our very special trifle, we're going to add some poached apples. And these are super delicious because I'm going to be poaching them in some cider. So first of all, cut your apples in half. Now I've used these beautiful Pink Lady apples because I absolutely adore the colour. and the colour stays there once they're poached as well. Okay, so then we're going to remove the cores. We're also going to take the bit from both ends. Once they're all nicely cored, we're ready to cut them. Now don't cut them too small, otherwise they're just going to disintegrate. So they need to be quite chunky. I do 4 or 5 cuts across the apple and then the other way. And then into a deep dish, at least an inch high. They can be rough, that's half the beauty of them. So that just fits perfectly in this size tray. Now, if you're worried about them going a little bit brown, just add a squeeze of lemon juice over the top. And you can just toss those around a little bit. And then we're going to cover them completely with the cider. I'm going to place a little piece of silicone paper or parchment paper over the top. This will also help to stop them from going brown. And it also helps them with the steaming process. As the cider heats up, it will keep the steam underneath the paper. You need to keep an eye on them. So we're going to put them in at 170 degrees centigrade for 10 minutes. We're going to check them after 10 minutes because they should be done. If they need a little bit longer, we'll leave them in, but definitely check them. The jelly is now set in the fridge. You can see it's nice and firm. That's our lovely apple jelly. We've got our cooled sticky toffee sponge, the sticky toffee sauce, our compotted apples in cider, and our lovely oat crunchy crumble. So now we're going to begin the assembly before we make the custard. So I'm going to just level the top of my sponge. If yours is level, don't bother. So I'm just going to very carefully cut the top off. I'm using a serrated knife. Be careful not to chop off your hands. Make sure your hands out of the way. Now don't throw this away because we're going to use this. We're just going to put that to the side. And then we're going to put this into the fits almost perfectly, doesn't it? I'm going to get that in there. There we go. So that's sitting on top of the jelly nicely. So I said we're going to keep that. We're going to use that piece. So make sure you don't throw it away. Now I'm going to spoon on top of that some of the sauce, some of the apple, and some of the crumble. And I want to put it towards the outside of the bowl because I want it to look attractive and I want you to be able to see what's in there. And we've got all those beautiful colours. So we've got the reds, the pinks of that lovely pink lady apple there. So I'm just placing them around the outside. And I'm going to put, when I said we needed some of the larger chunks, I'm going to put those towards the outside as well. These ones, we're going to put more, so we don't need to worry too much. But because I'm going to put crumble in, I'm going to put custard in there. Some of that chunks will go slightly soft. They'll be lovely because I'll have that lovely tacky texture. But I don't want to put too much in this, just so they can see what is actually in the trifle. So there we go. I can see there I've got a mixture of the apples that I'm going to be able to see. I've got a mixture of the crumble that I'm going to be able to see. So I'm now going to spoon in some sauce. We'll put that so that we can see it as well. Just dribble it down the side. Really doesn't matter if it falls on the side of the dish. It actually looks really, really nice. You can see how decadent, how luxury, and how gorgeous this is going to be. I'm going to put a couple bit more bits of apple on those bigger bits. There we go. That looks pretty damn good to me already. So I'm going to put just the rest of the apple. I'm going to save some nice bits for the top. So pick out the bits that are less colourful and put those in the middle. and save some nice pink bits for the top. And a little bit more sauce can go in there. There we are. We've got our jelly, we've got the sponge, we've got our crumble, our lovely side of poached apples, and our sticky toffee sauce. So now we're going to move on to the custard. Now I'm going to take the custard powder with the sugar. I'm just going to use a whisk and just whisk them together. And with some of the rest of the cold milk, we're going to make it together to form a paste. We don't want it to be lumpy, so you're just going to add a little at a time and whisk it until it's smooth. I'm going to take the rest of the cold milk and I'm going to add it to the pan. Pop the vanilla into the milk. So once the milk is at boiling point, I'm going to remove it from the heat and I'm going to fish out my vanilla pods. And pour a third onto the custard mix. Give it a stir. Return it to the pan. And that goes back onto the stove. And we're going to stir it all the time until it comes to the boil. Our custard is now looking super lovely. It's shiny, smells delicious, looks nice and thick. So I'm going to just add in that vanilla. Now the pod's nice and soft. So you're going to have to remove the seeds. So just open it up and scrape out the seeds. And pop that into the custard. Now, if you haven't got fresh vanilla pods, it's okay to use extract. Stir in the vanilla. So now we're going to spoon the custard into the trifle, making sure we cover all the fruit. Now I am going to leave a little bit of room there because I'm going to put more compote, more crumble and more sauce before I put the cream. So make sure you leave enough room for that. So now we're going to pop it into the fridge to let the custard set and cool before we can pipe the cream on top. Our custard's now set and cold, and so we're ready to decorate the trifle. I'm going to be using some of the components that we've already put into the trifle and some shop bought decorations. So of course you can make your own, and also some creme chantilly, which is already on the channel. So I'm going to start by piping some cream on top of the custard. And then I'm going to put some of these lovely big crumble pieces in there. Just chuck them down the sides. A bit of height. Kind of put some in the middle there as well. A few more on the side. Get a little bit of sauce in there. So I'm actually going to put the sauce into a piping bag. So I haven't got a nozzle. I'm just going to cut a hole in the bottom. The great thing about this is you can just do your own thing. There are no rules whatsoever. And some of our lovely apple that's really pink now that it's been sitting in the juice. And then I think we need a little bit more cream on top. Now I also have that bit of leftover sponge from earlier we took from the top. So I'm going to use that up as well. I'm just going to cut that into some nice little squares. And we can pop those in there as well. Just a couple, we don't need many. It just adds into some different, gives it a different dimension. Loving that, that looks absolutely excellent. And then I think just a little bit more apple on the top there. And it's entirely up to you. Now I'm going to add some nuts because I think that goes really well with the entire dish. And I want to add a little bit of sparkle into there. So I've got some beautiful gold decorations, but I'm also going to make my own. So I've got some toasted hazelnuts and I've got some gold glitter powder. And if you actually just take the top off this and put some of the powder into the nuts, and then we're going to mix them around, and you'll find the gold will adhere to the nuts. And then you've got beautiful gold hazelnuts, and they really will twinkle in the light. We're going to drop a few of those gold hazelnuts on top. I can't see around the other side, so I'm just going to turn the bowl around a little bit. And then just a little bit more gold, because you can never have the gold, enough gold. This is a celebration. We're going to add in a few sprinkles. Every trifle has to have sprinkles. Doesn't matter what sprinkle, but it's not a trifle without a sprinkle. Wow, I just love those colour of those with the apples. That's really beautiful. And I'm not going to do too much more because it's looking really stunning. And I just want to have a little bit of sauce. So I'm just going to dribble some of that sauce over the top. And the challenge really is knowing where to stop. I just have one more thing, I can't help myself. I'm just going to put a star on the top. That has to be the trifle for this year. I mean, it looks stunning, it's delicious, it's unique, and it's going to be for any special occasion.